Good evening, happy Sunday, and welcome to episode 7 of the Digital Orthodontist Live. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Fagala, and tonight our guest is none other than Dr. Brian Anderson. Brian is the founder of the most popular orthodontic group on Facebook, that is, of course, Orthodontic Pearls. Tonight we're going to discuss Brian's top 5 clinical pearls from Orthodontic Pearls. I think you'll really enjoy that. That's going to be our game segment for tonight. We're going to look at different types of mindsets, namely productive and destructive mindsets, the dangers of perfectionism and negativity online, and how Brian fits in his workouts. And we're also going to talk about how to improve clinically year after year. But first, let's get our theme song in there. All right, we got some people coming in here right now. What's up, Vaz? How are you, my friend? Dr. Seta, how are you, brother? I'm wearing the suit to rep Dr. Seta. All right, well, let's jump in with this. We're going to go ahead. There's going to be no opening segment. Hey, Jennifer, how are you? No opening segment tonight. We're just going to go straight in with the bio and bring Brian on. As you know, it's always the potential of a technical difficulty when we bring someone on, but hey, we're just going to wing it. All right, so for a bio for Dr. Brian Anderson, he graduated summa cum laude from Brigham Young University, after which he attended dental school at the University of Iowa. Great school. As a dental student, he scored in the 97th percentile nationwide on both Parts 1 and Part 2 of boards. Good evening, Thomas. And then Brian loved earning his orthodontic specialty training at the University of Minnesota under current AAO president Brent Larson. Man, a 97th percentile nationwide on both parts of boards. That is better than I did. All right, and then Brian is in private practice in Utah. Let's see. Let's go ahead and get Brian. I'll go ahead and request to join there, Brian. Let's see if it will let me. Brian is in private practice in Utah and Nevada. He loves orthodontics because he feels flow, which is a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process every day at work. His personal interests include sports, exercise, art. He's actually a gallery featured sculptor, travel, community service, and spending time with friends and family. Dr. Anderson and his wife Mindy have 3 beautiful girls and a baby boy. It looks like we have not gotten Brian onto the show. So, in the case that this happens, we may have to restart. Let's see. And we're waiting on Brian. Good luck tonight, Neil. I think we're going to need it. And here we go. There's Brian. What's up, Brian?
There we go.
Man, almost a technical issue.
I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We only practice this, what, 4 or 5 times? Yeah,
that's right.
Well,
good to be here, man.
Good to be here. Good to have you here. We are both perfectionists, which we're going to talk about how that's not a good thing tonight. So we practiced this several times, and then you never quite know when it's live what's going to happen. So it's good to have you on here. It looks like we've already got a little audience building up here. Thanks for being on the show, man. I've wanted to have you on for a while.
Thank you. Honestly, of course, you're my buddy, so it's always just fun to talk to you, whether we're doing it here or whether we're just doing it in person. But I really respect what you're doing. I know it takes a lot of effort. Just being involved in the process this week, I know how much you put into it. So thanks for doing what you do for our specialty. And I'd like to start out with a digital fist bump.
Yeah, we can do a digital fist bump. There we go. Perfect. Little bones for a Sunday. That's great. That's wonderful. That's right. So there's something new I actually want to do. And before I get there, I have a coffee mug. I like to have a new coffee mug each week. I've not done that every week, but I want to start that. Just so no one gets confused as to who's in better shape between the two of us or who has a better tan. I have my donut mug today. Nice. It says, donuts. And it's got a little hole through the middle of it. So it's an engineering wonder. And I'll be drinking from tonight. All right, so one new segment that I want to have is I want to start discussing current events in orthodontics, so sort of in the kind of the ortho world, I call it. And a couple things that have come up recently. There's one today that we'll get to in a second. But last week, if you're in the Facebook groups, you've been following along, Sean Carlson and a bunch of others, but it seems to be mostly Sean's deal, ortho science. There was a lot of, I don't know if controversy is the right word or whatever, but there were some events that were scheduled during AAO lecture times. And some people were upset and thought that wasn't right. And so I think maybe he was encouraged to cancel some of those events. I was going to be attending some of those events, myself. Right. And I get it. But I want to kind of see what your thoughts on that were, I guess. And then I'll ask the audience too. We're going to do a lot of audience participation. We're trying to do more tonight. Do you think those events should have been canceled? Yes or no? And Brian, what do you think?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, completely genuine. Sean is a super nice, very classy guy. I think his idea of orthoscience is fantastic. I do think it's really important to support the AAO, and I'm sure he feels the same way. I mean, honestly. Yeah. So I have no doubt, like, he'll be able to do both. He'll be able to support the AAO and promote orthoscience. So I really think it's, in the end, it's not going to be a big deal at all. What we have planned for the Ortho Pearls that same on Saturday night is later. So after opening ceremonies, we're giving people time to do their alumni receptions, and then we're doing a party at Q's Restaurant. So that's within walking distance of the convention center, so super convenient. Starts at 8:30, and then there's going to be some drinks and stuff like that. And then, as you know, some wannabe rock stars are going on.
I don't know about wannabe.
At 9:30 or 10.
I don't know about wannabe. I don't know.
Legit.
Yeah,
rock
legit
right?
Rock stars. So I thought at some point you might bring it up. So I have the drum head. This is the drum head, everyone.
Yeah.
Brian's signature on it. We all have the signatures of third graders. It turns out. It's funny. We don't have like a rocker signature.
I guess so.
Did develop that over time.
No.
Yeah. So I think I saw in a group where it was sort of combining the idea of Anna says wannabe. Well, what do you know about it, Anna? You know. Barry Glazer said Freebird. Oh, very, very nice, Barry. Barry's comments are always on point. Great job, Barry. I think it was confounding the idea of these orthoscience events with that event late at night. And I just wanted to say, to kind of clear the record, we did vet that out first. We asked for permission. I do understand kind of the frustration, if I'm Sean, is you're trying to provide value to the event. And there's a lot of people that never go to any lectures. And so you put on an event like that, and, you know, he even had kind of invited me and Neon Canvas to do something. It just didn't work out timing-wise, but he's been very generous with that. And so obviously wish him the best of luck with that. I get both sides of it, but let's jump into the next one. I just saw this morning. I don't know if you read up on this, but this was in Scott Fry's group, OrthoCosmos. And when you do a show like this, it's going to be about publicly, so I want to be respectful and also legal with this, but there's a popular clear aligner speaker whose name was found on a direct-to-consumer aligner product. There you go. How safe and guarded was that?
There you go.
And so obviously there are two main factions. There was one group that was like outraged that she would be a part of this and helping out this direct-to-consumer product, and then there was another one that was being defensive of her and saying that she has every right to do that. I guess, where do you stand on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all, there was a discussion in Orthodontic Pearls about that very same thing. And, you know, where I personally stand is I feel like if there's going to be any sort of, quote, DIY orthodontic solution, it should involve orthodontists. Like, we should be running that, where the patient has to see an orthodontist, there has to be a radiograph. So I don't really support the DIY stuff, you know, with these venture capital firms, right, where the orthodontists aren't in charge, okay? So that's my personal feeling. But I also think that we don't need to be like a jury of our peers, right? And so I think that anytime we have a discussion that's focusing on someone that's personal, it always needs to be very open-minded. We need to give people the benefit of the doubt. We don't want people to feel like we're ganging up on them, that we're being unfair. Because frankly, if we're gonna have an honest conversation, we can't have our feelings so entrenched, so negative, right? Because then we're never gonna, whatever the other person says is never gonna get through.
Yeah.
So I do feel it's very important to be respectful, to be collegial, and sure, have the conversation, but it's got to be done the right way. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So I think there was also criticism of maybe that post was put up in Pearls and it was taken down, or in maybe another group. And I think that's right. I'll sort of speak for you and say that if you've ever moderated a group, there are things that come across the wavelengths that you kind of wish weren't on there because it can create negativity. So it's a balance. We're going to get specifically into that conversation later. It is sort of one of these things, you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I don't really know what the right balance is, but I understand.
It's tough.
It's tough. So anyway, all right. So that was current events. That we'll be starting out with that. Hopefully moving forward. So much chatter on the comments there. I guess if you have a strong opinion, let me know kind of what you think. It looks like Neil Kravitz was requesting to join. I don't think we can bring 3 people on, Neil. If we could, I'd definitely bring you on because
dude, that'd be sweet, man.
I think Neil probably wants to weigh in on this and have an opinion. If you just want to type out your opinion, Neil, I will read it. on air. Let's segue though into the questions proper. And there's three main topics I want to get through tonight with you, Brian, and that is clinical orthodontics, mindset and philosophy, and then also some questions about your personal life. For me, I want to start with clinical because that's really where I first became aware of you. It was through the Orthodontic Pearls, which you started. At that time, there was really only one other big clinically focused group. That was Derek's group, the Pragmatic Orthodontist. And to be very clear, if Derek's out there, I don't know if he is or not, but I've learned a tremendous amount of Derek. I've told Derek that the way I do phase 1 treatment is largely influenced by Derek. And so thank you, Derek. Derek's a clinical master, so OCD about details in a way that's really inspiring. And I believe I've reached the point where I can say the same of you. I think the posts that you share are always of a very high quality. They're always very detailed, thoughtfully prepared. And I think your work is tremendous. So in the light of that, I want to ask you some clinical questions, if I may. So for starters, how did you get to where you are today clinically? And did being good clinically come naturally to you?
Yeah, well, so first of all, thanks for the compliments. Honestly, my perspective is this, that we all have some really great cases, and we all have cases that don't go as well as we want. And so I think it's really important to have mentors, but I don't think we need to put anybody up on a pedestal, because at the end of the day, honestly, nobody has all the answers, right? There's no orthodontic dogma. The science should be respected for sure. And yes, there are some people with amazing clinical skills that I've learned a ton from, that I really look up to. But at the end of the day, a lot of what we do is art, you know? Mm-hmm. So I feel like, you know, my interest in art, I've been an artist since I was a young kid. I won some, you know, competitions as growing up for sketching, and then I got into clay and I got into sculpting when I was in high school. And so that part has always kind of just been natural for me. I really, really love that part. But I think other things that we can do to improve clinically are honestly just like being passionate about orthodontics. Yeah, like sure. I love orthodontics, man. Yeah. And so, you know, as long as you're interested, you're always going to be wanting to learn something. You're always going to be wanting to try something new. I think we need to sort of let go of our perfectionism and inhibitions to branch out and do different things. And I think sort of this passion for ortho, this passion for art, you know, a desire to, like I said, experience new things and try and be more efficient and more effective have helped me for sure. For sure.
I always tell people when it comes up about doctors, which is sometimes comes up, and I think this is true of all jobs, is that it is almost all at a certain point. Like once you know what you're doing, you understand it, you've done it long enough, it really becomes as much about how much you care as anything. And so I think the best cosmetic dentist out there, you know, the one that was in your dental school class that had, you know, what they call God hands, or they were just, you know, just gifted in that way. And maybe you were like that. I mean, I've seen some of the sculptures you've done, and I think that's probably true of you. You're just artistically gifted. But it is true of that kind of person that they may not have worked as hard at it. And so they may have just kind of phoned it in, and their work wasn't as good. And so it's like the tortoise and the hare thing. And I think being a tortoise in orthodontics is continuing to be committed to getting better day after day. And absolutely having the speed of the hare helps, but it's really more about the persistence of greatness than just the natural gifts. So anyway.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Well, let's shoot on to this one. Biggest clinical heroes. I guess also along those lines, how do you keep improving clinically, and what are the areas you want to improve on? So I guess first, who are your heroes clinically?
So I think John Pobans is a good friend, an amazing clinician. I've had the chance to visit his office recently. And like, honestly, I was blown away. And again, I saw in him that he loves doing orthodontics. Yeah. And so, you know, that's key. I've learned a lot from Tom Pitts. I know I'm going to leave people out, but I've learned a lot from Tom Pitts, a lot from Eric Lankshin. So he was our program director at University of Minnesota. Yeah. He was an amazing clinician. Brent Larson was our clinical chair, or excuse me, the chair of the program there. He's now the AEO president. He was an amazing clinician. Maj Moshiri and Jonathan Nicozisis in the Alignment Intensive Fellowship. I learned a lot from Derek Bach as well, in the Pragmatic Orthodontist. Bob Miller as well. I actually had a chance to work with Bob Miller for a couple months on a transition in Park City, Utah. I worked up there for a couple of years. And you've met Bob, right?
Well,
didn't you meet him?
Puts me on the spot. I'm not sure, as you say it. I'm like, maybe if Bob's out there watching, it's like, well, of
Yeah.
course we met. We had dinner.
Yeah.
I can't say that I have.
So,
sorry, Bob.
yeah. Okay. So he spoke at the MOPC. He spoke at the MOPC. So
I met
you'd probably
Bob.
recognize
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
He's very
Yeah.
active. Yeah.
Okay.
He's very active.
We met briefly. Yes.
So, yeah. So super, super likable guy from South Carolina, Clemson guy.
Yep.
Okay. But a great orthodontist. And when I was transitioning with him, he'd been, practicing for about 30 years. I'd been practicing for like 2 years.
Right.
And we'd go out to lunch and we would just passionately talk about orthodontics. And it was fun. And I saw him, and he's a great clinician. His wife is an awesome orthodontist too, Juliana, that practices in Virginia and Park City. And it was really inspiring, honestly, to see him at 25, 30 years or whatever in orthodontics and still excited about it and still learning new things and progressive. So that was really impressive to me. And I thought, I want to be like that always.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, a lot of names I'm sure that we left out there, but those are some good ones. We're actually going to get to some more here in a little bit when we count down your top 5 pearls. I'm excited about that. I guess if I'm a resident out there, I approach this show in different ways, but I like to think that if I'm a resident, this would be like gold to me to listen to, people that have been through all this and just kind of take that in. So I hope the residents get something out of this. But if you're out there and you want to be better clinically, not like that's mutually exclusive to being a resident. I think I've been out 6 years and I'd like to get better clinically. What would you recommend? Where's some places you would start?
Okay. So this is a shameless plug for Orthodontic Pearls.
Okay.
But join Orthodontic Pearls.
Okay.
Join Orthodontic Pearls. I mean, that's the reason I created the group, was to be able to share information that if you're not connected online, you would never get in a lifetime. Because I think about before I even joined Facebook, when I had a question about a case, I was limited to basically my co-residents. We'd send emails and I mean, sometimes it'd take days for someone to get back, and here I am talking to people who had the same training that I had.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And so if there were deficiencies in the training, you're not going to get.
It's pretty incestuous. I mean, I think there are a lot of us that before a tough consult, maybe we'll post in a group and you get like 4 opinions before you even have to go in. I mean, that is an entirely unique thing. I talk to older doctors who say they remember times where they have to get on, their landline and call a buddy and try and catch them at lunch to discuss a tough case or something like that. So huge blessing. And I had 6 months in practice where I did not have that. Like right before Facebook group started, I had started from scratch. So I really only had residents and people through my program. And that was great. We had cell phone, we can text. I've still got that kind of a group, but Facebook groups for sure. I think your group, Prague, there's several other clinical groups now. And there's just an archive of 5 years or so with just gold in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. There's so much information in there. And we're fortunate that we have some of the best orthodontists in the world that are actually active and participating.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's the passion for orthodontics. You might think, oh, some of these guys that are so well known, they're on the speaking circuit and they've written textbooks and they do in-office courses and stuff like that. Yeah, they participate for free. And that speaks to their passion that we're engaged as professionals and colleagues. And it's fun, man. So join Orthodontic Pearls. Of course, there are some other great groups out there, Pragmatic and Orthopreneurs and stuff like that. So they're basically, you could get a residency, at least not a technical one, but you could get a residency from being involved in some
general dentist is going to see this and be like, oh, Brian said I can get a residency. This is great. So I know you don't let them in.
We screen our applicants, man. We screen.
So do we. I will say if they're in Orthopreneurs or they're in Orthodontic Pearls and they try and join the Digital Orthodontist, I'm like, they're good. I know they've been through a massive screening process. I think that's great. I think in addition to, the groups, what are some other things maybe that kind of help you continue growing clinically?
Yeah. So, visiting orthodontists in their office, that's huge because, I mean, you can share a pearl here and there or a tip or a trick or whatever on Facebook, but to have the whole experience, to get a feel for what someone's culture's like in their office, their leadership, the flow, their scheduling, how they interface with new patients, how they interface with their team members. I mean, that's really big. So I think in-office visits is really important. Finding a mentor, and maybe that could be something if you know somebody from one of the groups or whatever, reach out to them, shoot them a tough case if they're willing to. Going to CE has been huge. Like, I honestly love it, man. I think it's a blast. going to CE. It's fun to see friends. I mean, there's the social aspect, of course, but learning new things, taking good notes. And here's something that's been really important for me. So I learned to type fast in college, and I went to University of Iowa, where there was this dude that was like a legend. He graduated like several years before I even started, okay? But his name was Stanton Widmer, and he had these unbelievable notes that were in bullet form, and they were just freaking incredible. And class to class to class passed them down. Yeah. And so I am a Stanton Widmer disciple, man. Like I found, you know, his notes, and I was like, dude, that's how I need to take notes. And so I started taking notes like he did. And so I would do that at meetings. And then at the end of the meeting, because I realized that so many times we go to these meetings, we write stuff down, we get excited about it. And then there's this heavy inertia when we get back to our practice. Yeah. And maybe we don't even have that much motivation because things are going pretty well. And it'll be hard to sort of start implementing this. So I would review my notes at the end, and then I made like an action sort of blueprint kind of document. Yeah. And so I look at the notes and I say, what are the take-home points here, like the top 5? Okay, I'd list those. What are the things I want to start implementing, and how am I going to do it? Bam. So I haven't been as good at that recently, but implementation is key, man. You can learn all this stuff in the groups. You can spend hours a day on Facebook. Unless you actually make goals to like implement this stuff, how much does it benefit you other than saying, oh, yeah, it's cool? Yeah,
there are plenty of things. It's taken me 3 or 4 times seeing them to actually make it happen, which is kind of sad. You're talking about how fast a typer you are. I take great pride in the fact that I'm a fast typer, so we need to have a type off someday. In 5th grade, there was a friend of mine, and we'd have to do typing class, and so everything I could do to make something competitive, to make it more fun, so we'd have a type off. Yes. So I try and impress people with my typing skills. I know that's not something you care about, but anyway, thought I would share that. So
I'm down.
This year's AAO, man. You and I we're going to have a type off. All right, so I want to kind of shift into this. One of the things I think that is true of anyone that really closely follows these Facebook groups is, let's just be honest, there is a little bit of tension that seems to exist between some of the groups. So let's say this, Orthodontic Pearls started as a clinically focused group. To be honest, I wasn't aware of it initially. When I became aware of it was when Orthodontics or Ortho 101 closed down. So there was this day where there was this big argument. Ben decided to shut it down. And then very shortly thereafter, there sprouted up a bunch of groups. Glenn started his group. There are several that no longer exist. Yours was already there, though. And so it sort of quickly shifted the focus, as I saw it, towards your group. And it now has 4,700 members or so, which is pretty impressive. Glenn's is a huge group. Scott's got a big, I mean, there's several big groups. Courtney Dunn's got a huge group. But it seems like with time that negativity and that arguing that existed maybe in previous groups, it seems like a lot of that is in Ortho Pearls now. And so I guess I wanted to kind of give you an opportunity to address this and kind of maybe how that happened. And I guess, what are your thoughts on that? And if you think that's true or not?
Yeah, so the group started, again, with this purpose of being a safe place where people could freely share their opinions. We didn't want it to be negative. We didn't want it to be hostile. You know, we wanted it to be somewhere where people felt, like I said, comfortable. And it's a bit, I mean, it's a huge group. There's a ton of diversity, a lot of different opinions. And I know that we really all care about the specialty. I mean, I think anyone who's spending time on Facebook in an orthodontic group cares about their profession, period. Yep. Right? So there's a lot of passion, and there's this idea that we need to protect the specialty. There's so much change in our specialty. And this is not unique to orthodontics. I mean, look at the world. Look at Uber. Look at anything. I mean, technology is disruptive, right? Yep. So there's a lot of differences of opinion to what protecting the specialty means. Yep. Right. And again, a lot of passion there. So my goal has always been, hey, let's have disagreements. I'm fine with that. Like, disagreements are great. We don't want groupthink. When there's groupthink, bad decisions are made, right? Yeah. That's when you don't grow, right? So I want to have the discussions, but it's very important to me that the discussions are collegial and respectful and assertive. I don't want people to feel ganged up on. I want to feel like when we have a discussion, it's productive rather than someone getting on there and being like, oh man, that just made me feel kind of just nasty being in there. Just like even witnessing it from, not even involved, right? We don't want that. We don't want that. We want it to be where we can have the disagreement, where people, come out with their dignity intact. And again, if we're open-minded, then we're actually wanting to learn from each other. If we're not open-minded, then we're just criticizing. It's a war of words. And how is that productive, right? So I think some things have been very positive, and it depends on the day, right? So sometimes it's super positive, and other days it's not as positive. So, Kyle, life, it's not black and white. And I think I've learned that a lot more in the last decade. It took me a long time to learn that life's not black and white. There are complexities. So we can't look at the negativity and say, okay, well, Orthodontic Pearls then is a negative group. We don't believe in that. And, we're kind of having to step up a little bit more and police a little bit more because we don't want to censor. And that was one of our core values, that we don't want to censor. We want to have free dialogue. Express your opinion, right? I don't know. That's how I feel about it. So I feel like we're making positive changes.
Yeah. I think you have that choice always between freedom and safety. A government does, a group does, and it's which one do you want more? And it's sort of like if you want the most safe and polished group, then every post that ever would come through would have to be approved, and then it would be censored heavily, and nobody wants that. And then if you have the most open of groups, the most free of groups, then sometimes things like that happen. So, it's not a criticism. It's just really just kind of noticing it and wanting to give you the opportunity to kind of address it and kind of speak to it. And obviously there are going to be people out there that if you're on the side of, well, I want everything to be very polished and have nothing hurtful, they're not going to like the way that you do it if you're giving some, having some freedom. And some people just want everything to be completely unedited and never deleted and never modified or moderated. And at least for me, that's not realistic. For other groups, it is. And I think, that's the beauty of all this is now it's sort of like we used to have one channel. We'd sit in front of the TV, we had one channel. Now it's sort of like we got cable. We've got different options. You can kind of go where you want to. I know that at least my goal with the group, and mine's not as hard hitting as some groups. I don't expect that it's the one that everyone goes to all the time with every post, but it has a specific purpose. And one of those is for it to be a positive place where people know that it's going to be upbeat and positive. That's just who I am. If I'm going to be putting effort into it and I'm going to be putting stuff out, to be honest, it's hard to pull off the games. It's hard to do them. So we're going to do this instead. We're going to do what I'm going to call Pearl Jam. This is going to be top 5 pearls from Ortho Pearls, and you're going to rank them down. So we're going to do number 5 and number 4, but first we need to play a Pearl Jam song. You a big Pearl Jam fan?
Yeah, man. I grew up with that, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so that was a live by Pearl Jam. What are your pearls? And I have some photos as you show them. What's number 5 on your pearls list?
Okay. All right. So number 5, this was a Dovey Pearl shout out to Jason Cope. Monobond etch and prime, baby.
Okay.
That was a game changer for me as far as bonding to porcelain crowns.
Yep.
I've got so much confidence now in bonding to porcelain. It's fantastic. Seriously, I love it. And originally, I think it's even meant for like lab use, right? But it's got the etch and silane in one step, and I feel really comfortable and confident bonding to porcelain. So if you haven't tried it, get a bond.
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 4. What's your number 4?
Okay, I love this one. This one is one of those things that's transformed my practice in the way that I talk to patients about retention, removable retention. Okay, so this is Adam Goodman. He has this in his office, okay? Here's how I use it. I don't use it on every patient, and it's just a verbal thing for me. I don't have anything printed out. When you are talking about finishing someone's treatment, and they say, well, wait a second, so I have to wear my retainer for like the rest of my life? And I say, well, yeah, as long as you want straight teeth. Think about this. I've got a great friend who's in New York. He's an orthodontist, and he's got this perfect analogy. Basically what he says is, if you could put on an eye cream and you would never get wrinkles, just put it on at nighttime, never get wrinkles the rest of your life. Or you get fit, you work out, et cetera, you like, your physical shape. And then all you got to do to maintain it, all you got to do is just strap a belt on at nighttime. Who wouldn't do that, right? And then you can see sort of this epiphany, the light, lights are going on, and the patient's changing from thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to do this every night, to thinking, whoa, I only have to do this at nighttime. Yeah. So I say, that's with your retainers. Just pop them at nighttime. It's so easy, man. Who wouldn't do that? Like, oh, okay, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, right on. So, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. That one I'd actually missed, but I do some form of that, but I really like the way he does that. So, and we're going to put all these, we'll put these in the comments or as a separate post in Pearls and on the Digital Orthodontist after that. But all right, Monobond, Dr. Adam Goodman's retainer scripting, great stuff. I don't know if we mentioned it. Monobond, I think really it was a Jason Cope thing, and then Dobie brought more attention to it. So shout out to those guys. I saw Maz say off-label, baby. That's great. Yeah. As most great tips are, sort of like Triagel for buildups. That's sort of an off-label use. Not saying that I do that. Okay. All right. So in our pre-interview, and if you don't know this, we do a pre-interview. James has got a long post. I'm just going to kind of speak to this before we get away from it. Yeah. So James is kind of responding. I saw Greg respond to this too. Let me be very clear when I'm labeling OrthoPearls as negative. I don't mean that I'm labeling the entire group as that. And I'm also not saying that that's necessarily the way that I view it. That is the way it's been spoken of. So let's just be honest. Not entirely, but certain posts and individual posts, there was one that got into this real name calling thing. That's just a reality. And it was at the time that groups shifted away from previous groups, there was this thought of, well, now it's not going to be negative. It's not going to be whatever. It seems in some ways that it's returned to that, and not even just in that group. And so I think that was really the conversation, not a criticism of Pearls. I'm a huge fan of Pearls. I'll be speaking at the Pearls meeting. I'm a part of the Pearls party at the AO. But also I think we need to be honest about these things and have an honest conversation about, well, how can we avoid negativity in the groups? I mean,
yeah, it's important to address. And I know exactly where you're coming from. And we haven't been, as admins, perfect. I mean, this is a learning experience. This is the wild, wild west, man. Yeah. We're trying to learn. We're trying to get better. I feel like we're improving in our ability to moderate the group. Again, it's finding the balance,
right?
But I love my admin buddies, and we are committed to having it be a productive group. Again, not heavily censored, but just encouraging collegiality. Colleagues, not competitors. If we could just buy into that 100%, gosh, a lot of the problems would just take care of themselves.
Yeah, right on. Totally agree. Let's shift in. So that was clinical. We're going to shift into mindset. We'll come back. We'll do some more Pearls here in a little bit. I think just in general, you strike me as a big picture kind of a guy. I'm going to talk about this later. You're sort of like a Renaissance man. You got a lot of interests. One thing I'll just say that I was super impressed with you is if anyone saw Relapse at the Pearls meeting this past fall, that was Brian, as far as I understand, your first time on stage in a band, and he killed it. Of course, Brian being Brian, there were things that he wished he had done better and, little things he was asking for tips on. But that's that's probably like the 150th time I've been on stage. That was the first time you've been on there, and I probably made more mistakes than you. So shout out to you. But I think you seem to be like sort of like a guy that's really interested in philosophy and mindset. And so when you did the pre-interview, it was like all like mindset stuff, which I love. That's really my wheelhouse. That's what really kind of gets me going. So I want to jump through a few of those questions and kind of throw out some philosophical ideas for people. The first major idea, though, you mentioned was mindset. And you talked about destructive and productive mindsets. And so talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, going back to, what am I, a big picture guy or a detail guy? I used to feel chained to the details because I think a lot of us are perfectionists that go into orthodontics. And so I used to think of myself as the detail guy, as kind of the OCD guy, right? But what I realized over the last, 5-10 years maybe, is that being that OCD committed to the details was not energizing to me. Like that dragged me down, right? And so when I kind of shifted my focus to more big picture, like, okay, what's my end goal here, right? That gave me more energy. Like I feel more passionate about that. And so it's just interesting in life. We have the opportunity to learn about ourselves. And sometimes there are things that we don't know. I mean, you could ask me a question about myself. Well, are you this type of person or that type of person? And some things I'd say, gosh, I don't know if I know. But I do know now that I'm more of a big picture guy. So mindset, I think, goes really well with that big picture philosophy. And here's why. Your mindset determines many things as far as how you respond to things, how you react to things. how you treat people, your outlook, even like characteristic traits. So that's why mindset's powerful. If you can sort of tune into a certain mindset and buy into that, it's going to affect a lot of things rather than having to focus on, the 7 traits of highly successful people or whatever, and trying to adopt those traits. If your mindset's not in tune with what produced that trait, you're never going to get that trait. So that's why I like mindset. So
that's actually that's a great point. Is I think that we so often we focus on issues that are downstream, and so we establish what the broken pieces are, and we're trying to like put together those separately. But really, the issue is that upstream there's something that's wrong, and I think that's why mindset is so important. I speak of that in terms of religion. Is that people well, how do I get better at this aspect of my religion and all this sort of stuff? But it sort of starts at the most core of issues, which as it pertains to just mindset and philosophy is it's always these presuppositional questions or these basic ideas like mindset, like do you have an abundant mindset or do you have a scarcity mindset? Right. I mean, just basic questions like that really will influence and change the way you think. And that's been, I mean, for me is one of these kind of people that I didn't have a background in any of this. I didn't read a ton of books on these sorts of things. But as I started doing that, as I started spending time around people that are very successful and have great mindsets in these groups and at events, it really can change the way you think. If you just hear like a little twist on something, and then you forever, you adapt to that and change based on that. So what are some mindsets, I guess, like specifically that have had a big impact on you?
Yeah, so you mentioned scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. So those are the first ones I was really introduced to. My father-in-law is a successful entrepreneur. He does a lot of continuing education.
He spoke at Pearls, right? It was great.
Yeah. So he invests a lot of money in like programs like the Strategic Coach and different things where he's basically rubbing shoulders with other entrepreneurs and people who've been really successful, right? So I was first introduced to scarcity and abundance mindset like a long time ago, probably 10, 15 years ago. And at the time, honestly, I kind of thought it was a little bit BS, to be honest. I'm just sort of a healthy skeptic, I guess I would say. But I sort of was able to change the way I thought about it, and it made a lot more sense. So, for example, I think a lot of people get turned off by like abundance mindset because they think, well, there's supply and demand. Right. Economics is economics. Like changing the mindset is not going to mean that there's all of a sudden that changes supply and demand, right? For example, there are so many orthodontic patients, period, right?
Yep.
And there are so many providers. And so to say, well, if we all just have an abundance mindset, then there's plenty to go around. Like everyone's going to have just bursting, enough patients bursting out of their doors, right? And so I think some people get turned off because they say, well, that's not true.
Because it isn't,
right? Yeah. Right. It's not. So here's how you need to look at it. Here's how I decided to look at it. Adopting an abundance mindset does not change the number of patients and the number of providers. But if you adopt that mindset, your mentality, your demeanor, the way you interact with patients, the way you interact with colleagues, how you run your business will change.
Yeah.
And it's going to change in a positive way for most people, I would venture to say. So by adopting that mindset, you're much more likely to have an abundance, to be successful, right? And so there's also this idea of, abundance versus, quote, enough, So I think we also need to have, healthy perspectives that, let's have good expectations, and maybe we just need to be satisfied with having enough, right? Yep. So I don't love scarcity and abundance mentality, frankly, because over the last few years, I've learned about fixed mindset and growth mindset. Have you heard of those, Kyle?
So actually, I mean,
fixed and growth.
I saw it here in some of your like notes. I had not, and so I'm still on the scarcity and abundance mindset. So tell me real quickly. You said growth and fixed. Yeah.
Fixed and growth. So I like these better. These resonate more with me. So Carol Dweck is a psychologist at Stanford, and I think she's been at Harvard or some other places. And so she identified what she calls fixed mindset and growth mindset as really key mindsets that determine how well people do in life, in relationships, in business, in a lot of things. So fixed mindset is characterized by this belief that our intelligence, our abilities are basically inherent, okay? That they can't really change, they're fixed. And in the fixed mindset, effort is seen as kind of bad because well, if you have to put forth effort, then really you're not good at it, right? And frankly, since it can't change anyway, why are you even trying, right? Why are you even putting forth effort? Okay. So someone with a fixed mindset is always wanting to prove how good they are, to document how good they are, to feel validated. So how people see them validates their self-worth. Someone with a fixed mindset looks at a challenge and not as an opportunity, but basically as something that may threaten their status. Okay. So they're less resilient. Okay. So that's fixed mindset. Growth mindset views our talents, our IQ as somewhat fluid. We can improve those things with hard work, effort. So hard work and effort are good. If you have to work hard at something to be good at it, that's great. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, we had to study a lot to get an A on that test. So really, you're not smart.
Right.
That's the fixed mindset that thinks that way. Someone with a growth mindset views an opportunity, a challenge as, or I should say, views a challenge as an opportunity, a way to grow, right? So much healthier mind. These people are much more resilient. So I like fixed mindset and growth mindset better.
Yeah.
And here's the important thing. Each person, we all have elements of fixed and growth. Like I look back when I was in high school, I had a great friend, Brad Curtis. We grew up together. We went to elementary school together, junior high, high school. And we played tennis together. And like I always beat him. I beat him every single time. Like I had never lost to him, right? And when we would play together, he always wanted to play a match. He didn't just want to like hit. And he'd say, hey, let's play. And it got to a point where I was like, dude, well, I'm like 30-0 against you, that I didn't want to play anymore. Because it's like, well, if I play, that only means that I can potentially lose. And then my status as being better than you is diminished. Right? It doesn't help me if I win because I've already beat you 30 times. Right? And so as I was reading this book, I thought, dude, he was growth mindset. He wanted to get better. He didn't care about losing. I was fixed mindset. And that held me back. That held me back. So, but then I can look at things where I've had a growth mindset. You know, I think, okay, so we all have elements of both. And I think it's learning to be growth minded in as much as we can.
So it's interesting because I think the next question sort of follows up with that is that it would seem that I've sort of figured out that sometimes, like, and I don't want to criticize someone who's out there that is this, but number ones in their class, not always the case. Again, I'm going to say that. But if you're number one in your class, there is a feeling, well, I'm the best there is. You'll sometimes see those people come out and maybe not be as successful. There's obviously number ones that are extremely successful, so that's not always the case. But I think if you've been told your whole life that you're the best at this, you're the best at that, it's very easy to adopt a fixed mindset, because in that mindset, it's always worked out. Like, well, I am blessed. I am really good at this, and I don't have to work hard at it. You see it with elite athletes a lot of times that are coming out and they're extremely good, and maybe even a number one, number two draft pick, and then they just kind of give up on it. I mean, Johnny Manziel, maybe not the best example, but really highly rated coming out of college, did really well in college, and then got into the NFL, was drafted in the first round by the Browns. They traded up for him, and he just kind of fell apart and got distracted by other things. And I would assume he probably had a bit of a fixed mindset. I think one thing that's true about orthodontists, this is our next question, is I said on here, probably 90% of orthodontists would proudly say of themselves that they're perfectionists, okay, that they want to be perfect. I think it's probably also true that a lot of us struggle with humility and struggle with, for our whole lives, we've been told that we're the smartest, we're the best, we got into the school we wanted to get into, yada, yada, yada. And so I guess the question is do you feel like describing ourselves as perfectionists is a good thing, or maybe paradoxically, does it actually get in the way of being our best self?
Yeah, great question. So I view myself as a recovering perfectionist. I used to wear it as a badge.
Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. Hi, Brian.
That's
Hi, Brian.
Right, man. Hey, Kyle. So it's true, though. Like, I think like many of us, I grew up, getting good grades and, doing well in some extracurricular stuff. I was a state champion, high school sports guy. And, I pretty much, I felt like I, excelled at the things that I was involved in. And to me, when someone would say, oh, he's such a perfectionist, I would be like, oh yeah, that's great. That means that I'm talented. That means that I do a really good job, that my work is great. And I thought that was a good thing. I learned in my late 20s, I would say, that it's really not that good. When you're a perfectionist, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of shame and anxiety and stuff like that. Because, again, when I had this realization that life is not black and white, it's complex. I think perfectionism really gets in the way of us being our best selves a lot of times. My friend Jeremy Goodson, who's an oral surgeon, we went to the University of Iowa Dental School together. He practices in Oklahoma City now. I remember he told me one time this quote, and he said, "Perfectionism is often the enemy of the good," or whatever. And his point was this, that sometimes when you're really striving for something and you just can't let it go, and you're nitpicking and you're going back and you're revising and you're changing, and in this struggle to get it perfect, you can actually make it worse, or you can neglect other things, you know? And so there are only so many hours in a day, and there are all these things that we're supposed to be doing with our health, with our family, with our business, with our schooling, or, you know, whatever, that you want to put forth the effort to achieve excellence, right? But at the same time, sometimes, you know, just accepting like when it's enough. And I don't like good enough. That reminds me of a friend, Dan Early, in high school. He started this car detailing business called Hands-On Car Care. And Dan was a meticulous guy, methodical. And his slogan was hands-on where good enough isn't, right? Kind of clever, right? So good enough has this sort of connotation of just accepting mediocrity. So I don't like to say good enough, but I do think that sometimes it's enough. Another example, my dad's, he's a retired ENT surgeon, and he's gotten into painting. And he's a really talented painter. He does have a website. He sells his art for very reasonable prices. I don't get anything. So, but I'm just a shameless plug for my dad because I think he's super talented.
I was actually, sorry, I want to interrupt for a second. There's an ongoing conversation about what's in my mug. And there's been really, tonight there's a lot of funny people out there. But Derek just said it was donut juice, which I think is funny. So you will never know. I'm sorry. Keep going on there with your father. The talented painter has a website that you can post later, and people can buy some paintings. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can post later. And like I said, I don't get anything from it, but I'm a supporter. So many times, you know, over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, I'd go visit my parents, and I'd say, "Hey, Dad, what are you painting?" He'd take me down to his studio in the basement there, and he'd show me what he's working on. And then the next time I would go over, maybe a few days later, I would look at it and I'd say, "Oh, gosh, it doesn't look quite as good as it did before. Like this part, it kind of looks muddier, or it just doesn't look as crisp. I just don't like it as much." And it's because he was tinkering with it. Like it was great before, and yet he was tinkering. So sometimes when we tinker too much, not only are there diminishing returns, but sometimes our product actually is worse because of it. So letting go of perfectionism was so liberating for me. And I think we can actually be our best self.
Yeah, I think it gets in the way of a lot of us. And it is a common conversation. It's like not the first time that people have talked about perfectionism. Actually, when I lecture, it is an aspect when I talk about happiness that I talk about. I think it stands in our ability, it stands in the way of our ability to be happy, to be fulfilled, to see success as something that's not always on the horizon, but in fact, that's right with us, and that we can take gratitude in that. And I think that leads to happiness as much as just about anything. There's a lot of things, and I'll be talking about it at the AAO. But definitely giving up that perfectionist mindset, that fixed mindset is really good. Derek says diminishing returns equals reduced gains. Yeah, that's good. Let me shift into this. The opposite of being a perfectionist is not good either, and that would be the mindset that everything you do is not good enough. And isn't that just as bad? And I mean, maybe just a quick answer. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like don't beat yourself up, strive for excellence, try and achieve excellence, invest, in learning, again, in finding a mentor, and, whatever, to be the best you can. But I mean, you can't beat yourself up. You're going to have, like I said, you're going to have some great cases. You're going to have some that don't go so well. So you learn from it, you move on. Again, growth mindset.
Yep.
Growth mindset,
That's
baby.
great. That's good. That's a new one for me.
Use it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. That's going to be my takeaway from tonight. That and donut juice. So let's ask this last question about mindset. This is going to be on authenticity. A huge word for me. Like if you ask me, like what I most value in people, authenticity is going to be right up towards the top. But how have you become more authentic in the last few years? And what has that done for you personally, professionally? And how might being more authentic help people who are watching tonight?
Yeah, so I think probably a lot of us can identify with this. Again, we tend to be perfectionists. We tend to want to achieve. We tend to want to please people. In general, I think we're pretty nice as orthodontists, right? So I feel like it's been a gradual transition for me. When I was younger, like in high school, I was nice to people. I don't think I had an ego. I mean, I played sports and did stuff like that, but I felt like I was always trying to treat people fairly and nicely and stuff. And sometimes I'd hear about somebody that, didn't like me for whatever reason. And I remember feeling like, oh man, that just really hurt my feelings, right? And then gradually, as in the college and stuff, I served a mission for my church. It was 2 years, and we got tons of rejection. And tons of people just hated us for for being a missionary.
Right.
and so you just learn to kind of shrug it off. I mean, so that kind of helped a little bit, get thicker skin. And then, in practice and running Orthodontic Pearls, I mean, some people like me, some people don't, I'm sure, right? And not that I don't want to say we shouldn't care. I mean, we should care. We should always try and make things right if we can, treat people well, be kind and generous. But at the end of the day, there are some people that are just never going to like you, period. And those are the relationships that you don't want to invest too much time or energy or effort into. And you really just can't take it personally, So I feel like being authentic means, doing your best to be your best self. And then at the end of the day, kind of letting the chips fall where they may, and not worrying too much about that. We can't control what people think. We can't control, the outcome really of anything. The only thing we can control is, are we being honest with ourselves? Do we feel good about who we are? Do we feel like we're putting forth an honest effort, right? So I think that's been very liberating for me. And again, in trying to run Orthodontic Pearls, there's some things I've learned from. I've obviously haven't always done things perfectly, trying to get better, but it's a learning experience, and that's what life's all about.
Yeah. So much good there, and I wish we had more time to talk through it. I guess as I'm thinking through all those have all been the growth and the fixed mindset, the fixed and the growth. That's new for me, so I really like that. One thing for me that's been big is just giving up control. So I think another aspect of being a perfectionist is this idea. People will say that they're OCD, which is really actually a thing, and so maybe we're not actually OCD, but it's the idea that I'm a control freak or I have to have everything just be so. I think as you can kind of chip away at that, and the reality is as you get busier, as you have multiple kids, as life gets in the way, you have to, or you're going to drive yourself crazy. And so to a resident out there who would have been like me 6-7 years ago, you're probably very much a perfectionist. You're probably very much a control freak. You might think you're the only one who can do something the right way. And I think that those are all destructive ways to think. And you have to get to a place where giving up control is actually something that allows you to be more in control of your life. And it's sort of like Buddhist, kind of concept of it's only through giving up control that you actually gain control or something. Cliff, you'll have to fact check me for that. But it's a really huge thing. And so I hope people kind of appreciate kind of what's being said there. So let's shift into some more Pearl Jam if we can. We're going to count down a couple more pearls. And so here's another Pearl Jam song. Can you hear that? Is that coming through? Love those harmonics. It's a good one. We're just going to awkwardly sit and listen to this for 30 seconds. I got to hear that ride cymbal. There it is. No. Derek said that's the best thing I've said in a while. Sometimes, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. So actually, I was at Zach Brown Band last night, which was really a cool concert. They do like so many covers and all over the place. They did U2, Pride in the Name of Love, because they were in Memphis, which was cool. They also covered Jeremy. And on all their country songs like that they've written, I didn't know any of the words, so I was kind of sitting there and enjoying it. It got to Jeremy, and I sang like every word, like super loud. I was looking around and like no one knew the words. It was kind of funny, but love that song. So let's jump in to another couple pearls here. Number 3. What's your number 3? Do you remember?
Okay. Yes. So I love this one. So Alan Curtis's bite registration. Okay. One of the most frustrating things as an orthodontist is asking a patient to bite.
Yeah, this photo.
And they go edge to edge. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, it's awful.
They go edge to edge. You're like, no, bite on your back teeth. And they do it again. No, like bite how you normally would, like, bite down. And they go forward. And then, okay, just relax your jaw, put your tongue up in the roof of your mouth. You need to try and do the, try and do the bimanual manipulation. Yeah. It's tough. So this was freaking brilliant. And it works like every time. So Alan shared how what you do is, pull part of your glove off like that so it's loose. And then you ask the patient to bite down on your glove. Bam. And they go into maximum intercuspation like every time.
It's a Jedi mind trick. It's incredible.
Dude,
for sure.
It is. I use that like every day, man. Yeah. It's so helpful. Yeah. So that one's really
I like
good.
to wear really tight gloves and don't think anything into that. I just do. I like the tactile sensation. So it's hard for me to get a little bit of glove. So I'll sit there and kind of pull on it.
What size? Come on.
You don't want to know. You don't want to.
Are you an extra
no,
small,
not extra
bro?
small. Shut up. Not going there. There's small. I wear small gloves. I have small hands. All right, so here's number 2. And look who it is. Brian,
yes,
you can pick yourself for
it's mine.
pearl, Brian.
Well, but it's not
Come
mine.
on, Brian.
It's not mine, though.
Yeah.
It's not mine. So this is Bob Smith's. So this is one I just happened to share. And it's like, I mean, a lot of the pearls we share, we want to give people credit, right? If we learned it from someone else. So Bob Smith taught this one at a Damon Forum several years ago. It's called functional turbos. And for me, this was one of those things I put on my take home, list after the meeting. So this is just a, sketch that I made that sort of is a rendition of what it is. It's totally exaggerated, but you put your turbos on the upper 4s in a class 2 patient and you kind of ramp it towards the distal. So when they're class 2, they're biting down, the cusp tips kind of hitting that sloped, plane. And there's a natural just sort of encouragement to slide forward, kind of like a Mara or something like that.
Yeah.
So
like a twin
in
block,
conjunction with class 2 elastics, like a twin block. Yeah, exactly. So that's been awesome. Like I use that all the time. I mean, I frequently use the functional turbos.
So
thank you, Bob Smith.
Yeah, that's a great one. Another one that I do is crossbite buildups. So the same idea, like you've got like an upper 7 that's in a crossbite, lingual crossbite. And you build up that buccal cusp to kind of stretch it beyond the lower molar, and it helps to allow the bite to kind of force it out. I still have them wear crossbite elastics, but that's been huge too.
Yep.
So now for buccal crossbites, another one that I picked up from the group, I think I attribute it to Neil, but just having a TPA with a shepherd's hook that goes back to kind of pull it in palatally. So yeah, tons of pearls I've learned from all the groups for sure. It says, what material to use for the functional turbos? I'm guessing you use Triagel. What do you use?
So I've used a bunch of stuff. I mostly now use Triagel or floating from Reliance.
Yeah, so you use a flowable.
So I had used Bandlock in the past, but frankly, I've used a lot of different stuff, and those are sort of my go-tos now, floating or Triagel. Yeah. I like both of those.
So I had actually used for a long time that build-up material. Again, this is off-label. But the build-up material that used for the whitening trays, the block out, it's an LC resin, I think it's called. It's blue, and I liked it that it was blue because you could see it very easily. It was also really easy to remove when the time would come. You just take like a bracket remover and you just torque it and it would come right off in one piece most of the time. Triagel is a little bit harder to take off, but the beauty is it stays on better.
Right.
And it also has this kind of like cushion to it, like a little bit softer property, which I like. So I've now started using that. It flows too much, and I think that the girls sometimes struggle with it, but we started putting it, this is another pearl from Jason Cope, putting it in those old black syringe tubes. And
black opal tubes?
Yeah, so it's been huge too. So
yeah, that was a beautiful one too.
Well, we could go all night on some pearls, but let's shift into this, and then we'll have one more pearl to come. What is going to be your top pearl? I'm sure everyone is eagerly anticipating that. So I'm going to ask this one, and I feel weird. I've already put like the little flex emoji and had you flex in the photo, but you obviously like to work out. Ha ha, I have. Seriously though, your biceps are probably as big as my thighs. Now it's gotten a little weird. Sorry, but that probably is true. But honestly, for a lot of us out here who don't work out, like I really wish I could. I've tried. I've done everything. I got a Peloton collecting dust. what's your workout routine? And I think most importantly, how do you get it done each day? And then also, what does working out offer you? What does it do for you?
Yeah. So I've always liked working out. Like I did it for a couple years pretty consistently in high school. And then I played basketball and my senior year, and I felt like it would kind of interfere with my shot, so I kind of stopped. And then I served a mission, like I said, for my church for 2 years where you don't really get a chance to work out. Also, I sort of lost all my progress. And then in college, I got back into it for a little while. And then in dental school, totally didn't do anything at all, right? So then I got into orthodontic residency. And like you guys know, at that point, you're already in. Your life is less stressful. And so my good buddy, Chris Teeters, was my co-resident, also an Ortho Pearls admin, also in relapse.
Good guy.
And he was, great guy. And he is Mr. Efficiency, man. Like, for those of you guys that don't know him, like, this dude is incredible. Well, I'm serious, man. This guy will blow you away with how efficient he is.
Yeah. I will say that when we started relapse, I in every band I've ever been in, I've always been the one that's done all the planning, that's done all the organization, that's been the most anal or whatever you want to say about the details. Yeah. And I think I might be the least in this group. I mean, between Chris and Cole, like, those guys are on top of stuff. So whatever that's worth, if you ever want something done and organized, just work with Chris Teeters on it. But go ahead. So you and Chris are in residency, and he was working out, I guess. Yes.
So he was working out, and he was married and had a family like I was. And so he inspired me, man. And he was like, I told him, man, I really want to get back into working out. Like, how do you do it? And he's like, well, dude, I wake up at like 5 in the morning. I got to get it done before clinic. Yeah. And at the time, dude, I was not into that, right? And so I remember going that first time with him, and it was in the winter in Minnesota, dude. So cold, man. And waking up, and, you know, we had this little sort of carport that was not attached. It was a garage that was not attached. Going out, it is freezing. 5 in the morning, it's pitch black. And going to the rec center before clinic. Yeah. Oh, dude, that first day in the afternoon, like when it hit like 2 o'clock, I was dragging bad. And I just said to myself, okay, listen, obviously this is a shock to my system. I'm not used to this. I'm giving myself 2 weeks. I don't care how bad I feel for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to do this. And frankly, we used headgears at the University of Minnesota. Yeah. And I thought, dude, I'm asking a kid to freaking wear a headgear for like 14 hours a day.
Well, they don't do it. But yeah.
And I know. But like, I mean, if I'm asking them to do that, right, and I can't wake up at 5 in the morning and work out and spend an hour, like, that's pretty pathetic, right? So I gave myself 2 weeks, and pretty soon, like my body responded. I wasn't tired anymore in the afternoon. I was, you know, getting to bed at a decent time, you know, so I could support that habit. And so I just got into the habit, and it felt so good. Just my, you know, the endorphins helped with, I feel like, physical health, mental health, you know, confidence, that kind of stuff. So I really had the habit of waking up early, and I did that for the first few years of practice. And then things got busier. I got involved in some more practices and some other, you know, business stuff. And so I sometimes go before work now. I would wake up early. I sometimes will go during lunch if I have a 2-hour lunch, which I do sometimes. In the evening occasionally, and then like on days off in the morning or like on Saturday. So I try to go three to 4 times a week. Yeah, and I do a mixture of weights and cardio. It's mostly weights, but just for efficiency, again, we're busy. We're busy. Like, I used to spend 2 hours every time I'd go to the gym, and I can't do that anymore.
So you had to cut out the 45 minutes of looking in the mirror and staring at your arms.
Yes. Yes, that was tough.
Later. Kidding. That's all I did when I went to the gym, was just looked at my muscles, and it's hard to be efficient. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, here's how to be efficient, though. So what I've done is tried to essentially eliminate any like wasted time. So I'll do supersets of opposing muscle groups. So I'll do chest and back one day. So I'll do bench press, and I'll do pull-ups, and no rest between bench press, boom, pull-ups, boom, and then do a minute on the treadmill, and then back, bench press, pull-ups, a minute on the treadmill. So I'll do like 3 or 4 sets of that. And I'll do like incline press, and then, you know, rows, treadmill. So my heart rate's kind of staying up the whole time. My muscles are going to get rest between sets because, again, I'm working opposing groups. And I try and get in and out in an hour usually, unless it's a day off, and then I'll kind of maybe spend a little bit more time. So I just feel a lot better doing it. Honestly, I feel like it just pays off in multiple areas of my life.
Yeah, there's no doubt that exercising regularly is a good idea. It's just I've got to create time for it, and I'm not disciplined enough to. So maybe someday. I hope so. But thanks for sharing that. If anybody has any questions about that, there actually is an ortho, was it #Ortho Health Tribe, I think is what it's called. There's a group that maybe Derek started. I know Carrie Thangamani is really active in it, but there's some of that in there. If you're an orthodontist and you work out or you want some tips, it's a good place to go. Last question, and then we'll go to some pearls, then we'll have our top 5. I want to push on to this question, which is, like I said earlier in the show, you're a Renaissance man, and you do a lot of stuff. You have a lot of interests. I know this of you, that if you decide you're going to do something, you're going to do it to your best degree, right? But I guess, how do you keep finding the desire to learn new things when life is busy and there's other things kind of in the way? How do you do that?
So I just love learning, honestly. That doesn't mean that I always like going to school. There's a distinction there. So I love getting out of school to go to the orthodontist as much as most of our patients do.
Right.
So, but I'm interested in stuff. I mean, it's fulfilling. I think most of us are that way, whether we're learning about current events, politics, orthodontics, philosophy, religion, whatever. So, I think it's important to never be like satisfied to just sort of rest on our laurels, like, oh, I've arrived, I sort of know everything. I mean, there is so much to learn in anything that really, if you're passionate about it, if that, gives you satisfaction to dive in and learn something new and try and master something, then it's really hard to be bored, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. To me, it's always the things that are not orthodontics that give me the energy to kind of go on with my week. So like right now, is it, and I will say this, I think I say this in every podcast, but if not for my wife, Anna, I would not be able to do anything, literally. Well, if not for God, but Anna, like right under that, Anna supports me in so many ways, lets me do all these things, lets me work on this interview show. We've had a crazy week, crazy weekend. But it is the things like I'm working on I got a concert coming up in a couple weeks. I've got Relapse coming up. I've got another interview coming up next week. And those are the things that kind of keep me excited and moving forward. And honestly, I think for happiness, it is nice to have other things that are new hobbies and variety. And so I really recommend that to people to seek out hobbies. A new one that came for me about 2 years ago was cooking. I'd always loved watching cooking, but we ordered some of those HelloFresh boxes or plated boxes, and that's forced us to cook. And the beauty of it is, as a family, it forces us to sit down and eat together. And so there's oftentimes you find a hobby that allows you to do something with your wife, whether that's tennis or it's cooking or it's whatever, or with your family. Like now our kids are starting to get to the age where they can kind of prep some ingredients or work on the desserts. And so it's sort of a cool thing. Then we always sit down together and eat. So anyway, a longer conversation probably than we have time, but let's shift into this. This is our last Pearl Jam, our last Pearl. It probably sounds so bad coming through here, but anyway, that's Even Flow. I don't know if you remember the music video for Even Flow. It's them playing live, and it's like the coolest thing ever. I remember seeing it, like, I guess 1992. I was probably 8.
MTV, bro. MTV.
And Eddie Vedder like climbs up on this rafter and then like stage dives like right at the big hit. And it's like one of the coolest things ever. So go watch the Even Flow music video. It's awesome. Even at the beginning of the video, he's like, this is a concert, turn the lights down, and all this kind of stuff, which was probably planned. But at the time, it was like, this guy's a rebel. This is cool. All right. So what is your number one pearl? What is it?
Okay. So are you going to do the drum roll? Can I hear a drum roll, Kyle?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Kind of weird.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the phase 1 Nealisms, and I'm just going to introduce some of these here. But first of all, Neil is the one that says colleagues, not competitors. And like I said, that's a huge pearl in and of itself. That's maybe one of my favorite all-time pearls, right? But I love this phase 1 stuff. So number 1, he says avoid phase 1 if possible. Number 2, if you can avoid brackets, do so. Number 3, section out the hyrax key early. And he's got some great illustrations that show how the hyrax key, of course, gets in the way, that you can't see the laterals, right? So why take a pano if the hyrax is in? So section that out. This one's huge. Number 4, so never introduce distal root tip to the upper laterals. Keep the bracket slot parallel to the floor. So you always want to have those laterals have mesial root tip. He's got a great illustration for that. 5, never end phase 1 until you know where your permanent canines are. Take C&H out often. That's huge. So I always take a panel pre-phase 1 debond to check. And if it looks great, then awesome. If not, I'll put some more mesial root tip in there or more expansion or whatever. 6, check bands frequently and retrofill with cement. You don't want stuff getting crammed out. You don't want decal when you take those out. So make sure you're looking for that. And then he also, number 10, retain the lower arch with the lower lingual holding arch rather than like a holly.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Just like an awesome post. He shared so much in our group. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, shout out to Neil. I use several of those things. For sure, taking the pan, we do that every time now before we get out of a phase 1 case. Mesial root tip, that's a huge one, and several of the other ones you mentioned. Let's jump into this. This is going to be, we're going to wrap up. This is our TDO top 5. This is our lightning round. Number 1, if you weren't an orthodontist, what would you be, Brian?
Probably a cage fighter. I think.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a tough one. I think I'd probably be like an entrepreneur blogger.
Okay. Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look like somebody who is an entrepreneur, sort of blogger, speaker, Tony Robbins. So maybe you would just be Tony Robbins in another life. In 2 to 3 words, what's your favorite thing about orthodontics?
Art and sort of preventing entropy or reversing entropy. I just love that.
Yeah, that's cool. What's one thing you wish you had known sooner as a resident?
Okay. So how important it is to connect personally with patients and prospective patients. In residency, you have this tendency to be so worried about trying to prove to people that you're competent or show them how much you know because you feel self-conscious, right? So my father-in-law has a great quote that says, hopefully I don't butcher this, people care much more about your confidence level in your expertise than they do about your actual level of expertise. So just being confident, being comfortable in your own skin, connecting with people, if you form a connection, they're going to trust you. Yep. So I wish I would have picked up on that much sooner. It's so important. Yeah. Be personable, be friendly, care about them.
The way I've always heard that is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's sort of a version of that, but I totally fake it till you make it. Yeah, that's a good one too. Right. I think it's true that developing that time in the consult to talk to them as human beings, to ask them questions, to let them kind of direct that consult instead of just jumping in and be like, let me tell you what I know about your case and your FMA is this. Yeah, that's been a huge mindset shift for me too. So number 4, what is your who is your biggest influence and why?
I would say my dad or my father-in-law, maybe a combination of both. How about both of them? I'm going to break through. I'm going to be a rebel.
Yeah,
man.
You're a rebel.
Both of them.
It's okay.
So I would say both of them just from life lessons. My father-in-law, a lot of business lessons.
Cool. Right on. And then lastly, what do you want to be remembered by, Brian?
So we've talked a lot about growth mindset, right? So that's sort of top of mind for me right now. I want to be remembered as somebody that had a growth mindset. Not threatened by other people's success, someone that's genuine, someone that's sincere, someone who's going to help other people, right? Just being growth-minded, generous, and genuine.
Well, I think you're already well on your way. So congratulations on that. Great job on the interview. This was a fun one.
Thank you, sir.
I enjoyed it. A lot of interaction. It was a lot of fun. Here and there. So I want to thank Dr. Brian Anderson for coming on tonight's show. Brian, I have some digital applause for you. Yeah, I'm sure everyone out there is joining in with that.
Makes me feel good.
Very, very, very good. What we're going to do next week for the Digital Orthodontist Live is it's going to be a quick turnaround. This is going to be probably Friday afternoon, Friday night. I don't exactly know on the time, but I'm going to be actually live and in person with Dr. Anil Adikula. We're going to be live from Denver, Colorado. We're going to be at the annual Pro Ortho FE meeting. That's going to be a fun one. We're still trying to figure out where we're going to be, but that'll be a really cool one. And then I may do one, and then we'll be at the AAO, and we'll be doing a ton of stuff at the AAO. I will say that Brian and I will both be together at the AAO at the Pearls Party Saturday night, 8:30 p.m. at Q's Restaurant. You can go on to the Orthodontic Pearls Facebook group, and you can RSVP there. The best way to guarantee entrance is to purchase a shirt. We have so many people that are trying to go. It's an open bar. It's a free thing. It's going to be amazing. Relapse is playing. Brian is going to wear spandex. So we'd love to see you there. I'm also going to be speaking at the Orthodontic Pearls meeting. So the Mother of Pearls conference. Yes. It's going to be back in Irvine. Yes. What is the date on that? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yep. So the 18th to the 19th, if I'm remembering right. October 18th and 19th. Okay.
So I will be there. You can go register on the website. Neon Canvas is going to be there. My business partner, Alex Rasmussen, is also speaking. So a lot of cool stuff going on there. You want to be there. Are you speaking at that?
Hey.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak, but also it's going to be the first birthday party of Relapse.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's our first anniversary or birthday. It was born.
So it's going to be big.
Yeah, we're almost walking now, so it's great. So yeah, a couple of announcements there. We'll maybe drop those links in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. I really do appreciate you. We had a lot of people out there. I really am thankful that you enjoy this, that you get something out of this. We're going to keep doing this for as long as you keep enjoying it and watching it. As always, you can find the Digital Orthodontist live on Apple Podcasts. While you're there, if you would, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review. And that's it. Brian, great interview. I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of good stuff there.
It was fun.
Hopefully people got some good things out of it. Play our theme song. And from all of us here at the Digital Orthodontist Live, all of us, it's just me in a room by myself. Brian, are you by yourself? It's just the two of us.
I'm by myself, dude.
I'm Dr. Kyle Fagala, signing off. Have a great night. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.
Check it out, Brian. Here's Brian's signature. Is that you, Brian? B.A.? That's Brian right there. Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Good night, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.
All right, man.